What is going on, everybody? It is the Icebreaker here, back with another video. I got some more hockey content for you and some more season predictions for the NHL 2022-2023 season. Continuing on here with these season predictions for next year, going through each division, I got in this video my Metropolitan Division standings predictions. Since we've already covered the Western Conference, we're starting with the East. And I just got to say this real quick. The Eastern Conference is definitely the much tougher conference and is a lot harder to predict as a result. So I might be getting a little bit controversial with these takes, more so than I did in the Western Conference, but so be it. This is my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. And without further ado, let's start at number 8. Coming in 8th place, the team that I feel will be the worst in the Metropolitan Division this season, I got the Philadelphia Flyers with a 27-42-13 record for a total of 67 points, and they'll be among the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, in my opinion. This is not really much of a hot take for me. I just feel like the Metropolitan is super stacked, and Philadelphia is clearly the worst team in this division. I just do not like how this roster is structured as a whole overall. And even with the hiring of John Tortorella, who might actually, help their defensive structure more specifically and make them a little bit of a tougher team to play against, I just don't see a lot of great pieces on this team at the moment. Offensively, they are among the worst offensive teams in the league, in my opinion. I just don't think they have enough elite talent or enough star power there to really carry the offensive load for them. Defensively, I still think they're pretty awful. Again, the Tony DeAngelo trade there, I'm not a fan of. I just don't know where he fits on this team. He can be a little bit of an offensive producer, but more of a defensive liability. I'm just very interested to see how that relationship with John Tortorella pans out. And even they do have a couple of solid guys on the blue line, like Travis Sanheim, I think is a pretty good defenseman, and also Ryan Ellis, who had a very rough season because he was injured all season last year, and maybe he'll bounce back. If he's fully healthy, he'll definitely be a positive for this team. But overall, not really a huge fan of their defense, and especially their goaltending. I mean, Carter Hart struggled the last couple of seasons, and he's coming off a slightly better year than what he had the previous season, but still not great at all. Just nothing to like for me. I don't really like anything about this team as a whole. So I guess I'll get into the top 5 scorers. Number 1, I got Sean Couturier. If he's fully healthy, I fully expect him to lead the team in scoring. Roughly a 60 to 70 point guy, I think makes sense. But obviously his health has always been in question, and I don't know if he can ever stay healthy for this Flyers team. It's always been an issue, especially with him signing that huge extension recently. I don't know if it kicks in this season or next year. That could age like milk if his health continues to be in question. Then next, I got Travis Konechny. He should roughly hover around 60 points. Pretty solid playmaker. His goal scoring was a little bit down, especially the last couple of seasons. I have him at 18. Maybe he can get 20, 25. It wouldn't surprise me that much because, it's not really a huge gap there. But I feel like he's got more to give offensively, and I haven't been sold on him so far. I'm not sure if he's anything more than just a very solid second-line winger, but we'll see. Maybe he continues to develop and maybe breaks out and becomes a superstar in this team, but I don't know. And then also Joel Farabee is another guy that I think could break out. I actually have him leading the team with 30 goals, roughly 55 points. I honestly think he could be one of the few bright spots on this Flyers team, could have a pretty good breakout season. I just think he's got the skill set to be a very solid goal scorer, perennial 20-goal scorer. But also, I think he could elevate his game and be more of a 30-goal guy. We'll see what happens though with him. And I got Cam Atkins, who should be roughly 25-goal, 50-point guy. He made his position quite clear. He was very happy, very ecstatic to see John Tortorella joining the Philadelphia Flyers. Obviously, he coached him in Columbus. He made that clear on Twitter, and I don't know, more of a defensive coach, but I think Cam Atkinson definitely played well under Tortorella when they were with the same team in Columbus. So I think that could be a little bit of a successful combo there, and he can still probably be a productive offensive guy for this Flyers team. And then 5th, I got Tony DeAngelo. Just, no matter what you think about his defensive game, he's still going to put up the points, going to run that top power play unit, even though I don't think it's going to be that great, but still, he's a solid offensive defenseman, should put up some good points, roughly 50 or a little bit less. I don't know. Who cares? Roughly around that, he's a perennial 45, 50-point guy if he's fully healthy. And on this Flyers team, obviously, I don't think he's going to have the same near point per game season he had with Carolina, but still going to produce. But overall, I'm not sold on this team whatsoever. I don't really know what direction they're going in right now. I think they're kind of stuck in no man's land. They're trying to be competitive with that Tortorella hiring. Maybe they can sneak into the playoffs, but I don't know. I just feel like their roster, it kind of makes me think they should probably enter more of a rebuild than compete for a playoff spot because I just don't see enough talent there overall. And I have a friend who is a Flyers fan. He actually believes that this team can make the playoffs. And I think, adding Tortorella, if he implements a better defensive system and Carter Hart plays well under him, maybe there's some bounce back potential there. But I don't know. I'm just not sold whatsoever on this Flyers team. And that's why I think they'll be the worst team in the Metro division. So we got through the easy pick. I think most people have the Flyers pegged as the worst team in this division. But after that, it gets kind of tough. So coming at 7th, I don't know if people have this team ranked higher than 7th, but I got the Columbus Blue Jackets with a 37-36-9 record for 83 points in total. I fully get that this team has a bright future. They got a lot of exciting pieces coming up, younger guys who are going to take another step forward. I fully am convinced of that. But I still view this team as quite mediocre, even with the acquisition of Johnny Gaudreau. I'm just not super sold on them as a whole right now. I still think offensively, although I feel like they're going to be one of the better goal scoring teams, maybe like top half of the league, something like that, I still think it's a step below, an elite offense, I would say. Defensively, they took a massive step back last year, and I still think they're very inexperienced there. And by the way, giving Eric Branson, I think that was a really bad contract, but obviously I think they expect him to play a first pair or second pair role if they're going to throw that type of money at him. But overall, yeah, on the defensive end, I still think they could be a little more consistent, as well as the goaltending. Merzlikins not coming off the greatest of seasons. I think he had stretches where he played really solid, but overall, the numbers would suggest he had kind of a below average year. And of course, Korpisalo was just awful last year. I don't even know if he's going to be coming back or not, but we'll see with him. So yeah, I think there is a lot to like about this Blue Jackets team and their future moving forward. Guys like Cole Sillinger is going to take another step forward in his second year. Kent Johnson, I think, is going to be absolutely nasty. I think he has the potential to be, at the very least, a very good number 2 center. He maybe could be the franchise's number 1 center moving forward. We'll see what kind of impact he makes with the Blue Jackets if he does make that roster out of training camp. But yeah, I totally forgot to re-sign Patrick Laine. They did have to trade off Oliver Bjorkstrand, who was a key player on the top 6. So maybe their offense won't be as good as it was, but at the same time, I think they have some young guys, but definitely losing him is a bit of a tough loss, I would think, for sure. But as for the top guys in scoring here, first on the team in scoring, it's got to be the guy that just signed, Johnny Gaudreau. He's coming off a 115-point season with Calgary. And obviously here, I haven't taken a significant step back. I just don't think the elite talent is quite there what it was in Calgary, playing with Matthew Tkachuk and Elias Lindholm. I don't think Columbus has any player of those caliber. Even though Patrick Laine, they play together on both wings, could be a pretty fun duo. We'll see what happens. But Gaudreau, I just think it was kind of an outlier season. He's never really been a perennial 100-point guy. And even apart from another year, he had 99 points. His career average, roughly, he's in the 80 to 90-point range. I think he can get roughly 85 to 90. So I have him scoring 88 points. Still over a point per game, but not quite at the same pace he had last season. And then Patrick Laine should be a 40-goal scorer. He's got an elite playmaker playing alongside him in Johnny Gaudreau. Going to be roughly a point per game. He was a point per game in limited games last year, so I think he'll be hovering around that as well. And then Jack Roslovic, probably going to be their number 1 center to start training camp. Maybe it's Boone Jenner, but I honestly think he had a career season. I don't know if you can replicate quite that offense. So Jack Roslovic's the guy I think is probably going to step up in that number 1 center role. Should be a 50 to 60-point player. He's playing with 2 elite, wingers in Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine. He should definitely be pretty productive. Zach Werenski should be a 50 to 60-point guy on that blue line. He had a really terrific year last season. And maybe his offense, I think his offense was kind of high a bit. I think he had quite a high point per game average, and I don't know if he's going to have an elite offensive year, but still like in the 50-point range for a defenseman. I think that's very solid. He's a great goal scorer, shoots the puck a lot. Obviously, their number 1 guy on that blue line. And Jacob Voracek, just an amazing playmaker, had a terrific year in terms of his assists, only had like 6 goals, but I think he could still probably score like 10, 11, 12, whatever. 50 points seems about right for him. So they're top 5 in scoring. Not bad for that Blue Jackets team. They got some pretty solid players and a lot of young guys up and coming. But overall, still not fully sold. I kind of think they're still kind of mediocre. They do have some work to do on that blue line, and the goaltending needs to be more consistent. But I do think a guy like Elvis Merzlikins, it has the capability of being a top goalie in the league. but we'll see how he plays next year. If he bounces back and gives you like a .915 save percentage, the Blue Jackets will be in much better shape. Now, honestly, if the Blue Jackets were in the Western Conference, I think they would have had a much better chance to make the playoffs. But in this Eastern Conference, in this Metro Division, I just think they're in such a world of hurt right now. And even though this Blue Jackets team does have the potential to prove me wrong, they always are a team that I tend to overlook, kind of like the LA Kings in my Pacific Division predictions. But yeah, they're in prove me wrong territory, but I'm going to pick them to miss the playoffs. And I think the controversy is only going to get worse with this next one. So 6th in the Metro Division, and a team that's been as consistent as ever for the last 15 years, a team that I actually do not have making the playoffs. I got the Pittsburgh Penguins with a 42-32-8 record for 92 points. Still a relatively good season, but I have them missing the playoffs. So this is definitely a bold take, but I do think the Eastern Conference is going to start to experience a lot of turnover, especially with some younger teams. And the Penguins, who are a bit of an older team, got an older core. They're keeping the band together. They're trying to hold on to being a Stanley Cup contender and win as many as they can. As guys like Crosby and Malkin and Letang start to decline. They're in their mid-30s now, so how much left do they have in the tank being prime superstar talents? I just think the tides are maybe going to turn. This is kind of a hot take. Not really going off of logic, because logically I do think this team is good enough to make the playoffs. But I kind of wanted to see a little bit of change. I do think there is a possibility that the Penguins could start taking that step back as soon as this season. I do think offensively, I have no concerns with them whatsoever. I think they're going to find ways to score their goals with the guys they have. They're a pretty deep offensive team. On the blue line, though, although on paper it doesn't look so bad, I'm not entirely sold on what they did. I don't exactly like the moves they made. I just think maybe, offensively they'll have better point producing defensemen, but on the defensive end, I don't see how replacing John Marino and Mike Matheson for Ty Smith and Jeff Petrie necessarily make them a better defensive team. This is a team that I never really considered to have an elite blue line. I would argue on the defensive end, they got a lot worse, and I think it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle for them to keep the puck out of their net. And Tristan Jarry's coming off a good year, and he could still put up some good numbers and be, very solid. But I do think the chances, the high danger chances are probably going to go up against, I don't know if the team improved defensively, especially, adding a guy like Ty Smith, who's coming off a really rough season all around, has the potential to be a, solid top 4 offensive guy. But I don't think he's ever really going to be a great defender. And Jeff Petrie never really was an elite defenseman, or an elite defensively at the very least. I think he still could be a perennial 40-point guy, even though maybe this last season was the beginning of things to come. Maybe he is on the decline of his career now. So a lot of risk involved in the offseason moves they made, overpaying Jan Ruda for a guy who's probably should only be a third pair defenseman. Ryan Poehling, young guy, maybe has some potential to be an NHL forward, fourth liner, third liner. I don't know. I don't see the top 6 potential there. He never really showed it in Montreal, but we'll see. Maybe he gets a bigger opportunity in Pittsburgh and kind of elevates himself, gets more offensive opportunities, and comes out of nowhere and to be a key guy. In terms of top 5 in scoring, it's the same names. I'm not really going to spend much time there. Sidney Crosby should be a 90, 100-point guy. He's still an elite center in my opinion, unless he takes a significant step back with his decline. 30 goal scorer, 90 points seems about fair. Jake Gensel, hover around a point per game, 40 goal scorer, maybe 35 to 40 goals for sure. Malkin, I could see him taking a little bit of a step back. He can't really stay healthy, so for him to have an 82-game season is probably a tall order, but still, if he plays around that, he should be 75 to 80 points. Brian Rust had a very good season in terms of his point per game. I'm not sure if he's quite that player, but can he be a 30-goal, 70-ish point guy? I guess I could see that, because I still think overall the Penguins have elite offensive talent. And Chris Letang, again, another guy who had a career season in terms of points per game, should still be a 50-point guy. But again, a lot of these guys are in their mid-30s, so I could see him taking a slight step back offensively. But still, it's a good offensive team overall. I don't really have concerns with their point production. Overall, if this team does make the playoffs, obviously I wouldn't be surprised. You have a guy like Sidney Crosby on your team. Maybe it's not the greatest thing to bet against him, but you know what? Between them being still a contender or them potentially missing the playoffs, I think I'm going to bet on the latter. I just think the East is getting a lot better, and the Penguins being an older team is a team that I could see taking a step back. Similar to the Penguins, this is another older core that I could see taking a step back. 5th in the Metro Division, I actually got the Washington Capitals with a 43-31-8 record for 94 points, roughly in the same position. kind of fringe, on the bubble, if you will, of that playoff race. But I actually have them just missing the playoffs. So let's get into them right now. So at this point, you already know the hot takes are coming for this division. For the Capitals, I think there's even more of a reason why I could see them missing the playoffs. I just think there's some key injuries that they have to work with right now. Nicholas Backstrom, Tom Wilson, neither of them are probably going to be there for at least half the season. And also, it is a much older team. I could see a bit of a decline in some of their guys' play, especially a guy like Alex Ovechkin, who still is the grade A, could still be an elite goal scorer, pot over 50 goals. I mean, he ages like fine wine, obviously, but still, just overall, the roster I don't think is quite as elite as it used to be, especially offensively. They are going to take a step back with the injuries, like I mentioned, but I never viewed them as an elite defensive team either, kind of like Pittsburgh. So I don't think what they could potentially lack in elite offense, they make up in defense. The only thing that they did really improve was their goaltending, adding Darcy Kemper and getting rid of Samsonov and Vanacek. Definitely an improvement in goal. They signed Charlie Lindgren as a backup, probably not going to play more than like 15 games, but the goaltending situation definitely got better. And if their offense can be sustainable and they can make up for the losses of Backstrom and Wilson, this is in all likelihood probably still going to be a playoff team. So here are my Capitals' top 5 scorers. Ovechkin should probably still lead the team in scoring, should be roughly a point per game guy. Unless, again, takes a huge step back because of his age and finally catches up to him. Still probably a 40 to 50 goal guy, roughly 70 to 80 points. I think that's very fair. Kuznetsov should be in the 70 to 80 point range as well. Still a very solid number 1 center, a good playmaker. John Carlson, 70-point defenseman, one of the more elite offensive defensemen in the league. And then, of course, Matha and Oshie, kind of the secondary scoring. Oshie had some injury troubles. I could see him kind of start to decline a little bit as well because he's a lot older, but still should be roughly a 20-goal scorer, 50 points. And again, Matha, probably, I could see him having even more points than that. I think in a more elevated role, if he's playing on a top line with the injuries they have, he could be a guy that Loki kind of pops off and be like 30-plus goals, 70 points or whatever. He could be a key reason why the Capitals maybe don't take that step back that I would think they could. But I do think the depth they did bring in, I'm not fully sold on it. Like if Darcy Kemper can't stay healthy, and he's had trouble staying healthy in the past, I don't know if Charlie Lindgren is capable of being like full-time number 1 guy to replace him. But, assuming Kemper is healthy, he probably should still be solid. Gustafsson signings, whatever. I mean, he's third pair defenseman. The Connor Brown, Dylan Strome, obviously those are 2 guys that are expected to replace Nick Backstrom and Tom Wilson for the meantime in that top 6. But I don't know. I don't quite view them as top 6 forwards, so I'm not really sure if those guys can thrive in that role. Obviously, Dylan Strome playing with some good players has proven he could still be a pretty productive guy. Connor Brown's not bad either. I just don't know if they're quite going to replace what Nick Backstrom and Tom Wilson bring. So I could see for that reason the offense maybe not as elite as it once was. And overall, this is an older team. And again, I'm standing on my bold predictions. I think the Caps are going to miss the playoffs because I think the Eastern Conference is going to start to experience a little bit of turnover. And I can't always pick the same teams to make the playoffs. That'd be way too boring. So for the sake of these predictions, I'm going spicy. Capitals fall short of the postseason. And the bold takes keep on coming. So 4th in the Metro Division, I got the New Jersey Devils with a 45-32-5 record for 95 points. And I got them edging out the Penguins and the Caps. And I have the New Jersey Devils sneaking into the playoffs as that second wild card in the Eastern Conference. This is a massive hot take, and they could easily prove me wrong. They could fall flat on their faces, be a bottom 2 team in the Metro Division. I could definitely see that happening if the young guys are not ready to take a step forward. But I'm betting on this young core. I think what they did in the offseason shows me that they're ready to compete for a playoff spot. They're definitely trending up in the right direction. I think we're going to see a lot of breakout seasons. So the one main concern that I have with this Devils team that could obviously turn this prediction sideways is definitely their goaltending. But to be honest, even though Mackenzie Blackwood has had struggles to stay healthy and he's kind of been declining ever since his rookie year slowly, I still believe he can be a really good starting goaltender in this league, and I think he's going to have more of a breakout and a bounce-back season, if you will. Behind with Vitek Vanacek, brings some more goaltending depth there. I still think he's a solid goalie. You can run with that tandem. I think they could get by with it, but I have them taking a massive step forward offensively, and some players I'm going to have to get into very soon. And I think they took a massive step forward on the blue line as well. John Marino, one of the better defensive defensemen in the league, and has a little bit of offense in him, maybe not a lot, but I think defensively they definitely improved. Brendan Smith's more of a depth guy. And also adding or re-signing Jonas Siegenthaler, one of the more underrated defensive defensemen in the league. I think their blue line is coming together quite a bit. And of course, you pair those guys up with Dougie Hamilton, with Damon Severson. Maybe Luke Hughes makes the team out of training camp. Probably not Simon Nemec. We'll see what happens with him, but he's obviously going to be a really good defenseman, being the number 2 overall pick this past draft. So yeah, the blue line already is pretty solid, in my opinion. Got significantly better and is going to get better down the line. And obviously, their forward group has improved. They add Eric Haula. They trade away Pavel Zacha, but Eric Haula had a pretty good season. We'll see if he can replicate that, but in a second or third line role, I think that's very good depth for them. And Andre Palat, who it was amazing for the Tampa Bay Lightning how they were able to get their hands on him. He should be great in that top 6 and have a very good season. Still, 31 years old. He still have a lot left in the tank. Top 5 in scoring for the Devils. Obviously, Jack Hughes would be the leading scorer. He was over a point per game last season, even though he missed a lot of time. But this next year, or this season, I think he's going to have a massive breakout year, have over 100 points, which is a massive hot take. But he was on a 94-point pace last season. So, assuming, he's the number 1 center, the elite offensive guy, should be taking another step forward in his development. Is this really a huge reach? Because honestly, I don't know. I could definitely see it happening if he was playing at such an elite level last year. If he plays a full season with better line mates to surround him, he probably could be a 100-point guy. And I think he's going to be an MVP caliber player, only because I think he's going to be one of the reasons why the New Jersey Devils do sneak into that playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Jesper Bratt was near a point per game. I should expect him to be roughly an 80-85 point guy. One of the better playmakers on the team, obviously. Nico Hischier another guy I could see having a very massive step forward. Terrific number 2 center, coming off 60 points. I could see him hitting 30 goals, 75. That's maybe more of a bit of a breakout for him, even though he had a pretty good season. Andre Palat should do what he does. 50, 60 points makes total sense to me. And Dougie Hamilton leading the way on that blue line. 50-point defenseman. Maybe he could have a bit of a bounce back offensive year because it was a little bit disappointing, but he had some injury issues. So I do expect him to be one of the more elite offensive blue liners in the NHL. And this is not to mention some of the younger guys who could take another step forward. Dawson Mercer coming off a solid rookie season. I could see him breaking out in his second year. Maybe a guy like Jesper Boqvist kind of comes into his own a bit. I think this is going to be a very solid offensive team. They did improve defensively. I just like where this Devils team is going. So I'm going with this bold take. Flame me in the comment section. I don't care. I need to see some new teams get in because, again, the Eastern Conference is changing. And, just picking the same 8 teams from each conference, that's not how the NHL works. There's a ton of parity in this league. So there's going to be like 5, 6 different teams we'll see in the playoffs. And I'm betting on the New Jersey Devils to be one of them. Coming in top 3 in the Metro Division, maybe somewhat of a hot take as well. I got the New York Islanders having a bounce back season, getting back into the playoffs with a 46-27-9 record for a total of 101 points. But I ironed this out here. The misfortunes they had last season, starting on the road for 13 games, playing like the first month and a half, 2 months of the season on the road. They got some COVID issues last year, some injury issues as well. I do think this team has the capabilities of bouncing back behind, of course, Ilya Sorokin, who I believe will be a Vezina candidate next year. Have an amazing year. He had a pretty good season last year, all things considered, and the Islanders were, well out of the playoff race. But definitely not 100% confident in this pick, but I still think the Islanders have what it takes to get back into the playoffs. They have great defense as well, with Adam Pelech and Ryan Pollock. Obviously, they're going to re-sign Noah Dobson, who has a bright young future, probably going to be their leading offensive blue liner. You add Alexander Romanov, big body, big hitter. I don't know if he has quite the offensive ceiling, but should come in fine, be a top 4 guy there who has a pretty big, bright future as well. And offensively, obviously, you got Matt Barzal, who's going to have a much better season. I think he's going to thrive a little bit more, have a bigger offensive role with Barry Trotz, maybe not holding him back, on the defensive end. Probably the next coach is going to give these guys a little bit more freedom to play offense, but not really, take away too much of their defensive games. And maybe they add Nazem Kadri. I did hear that maybe he's rumored to sign there. So that obviously would improve their offense tremendously because he's coming off like an 88-point season in Colorado. Probably wouldn't replicate that if he does sign because it's not official yet. He should definitely be top 5 on the Islanders in scoring. So again, quickly, top 5 scorers. Barzal, going to have a much better offensive year, I believe. Should be a 20-goal, 70-point guy. I don't think that's super outlandish to think. Brock Nelson's coming off a great season. He had well over 30 goals. I could see him doing that again as the number 2 center. 60 points makes sense. Anders Lee, fully healthy, he's roughly a 50-55 point guy, can get roughly 30 goals. Noah Dobson, 50-point defenseman. He proved it last year. I see no reason why he wouldn't do that again. And I guess fourth, I have Josh Bailey just because he's a good playmaker. Probably not going to score a ton of goals, but should hover around 40 to 50 points. That's if he's still on the team come training camp, because they have some cap issues that they got to iron out with re-signing Noah Dobson and potentially getting Nazem Kadri some big money for his long-term deal that they're going to offer him. So Josh Bailey could be a guy that's traded to kind of clear some cap space. But, overall, I think the offense is going to be much better than it was last season. And with luck and health, this Islanders team has all the capabilities to bounce back and make the playoffs. A lot of people are not sold on this team. They just don't think they're hot enough offensively. I still think the goaltending's elite. The defense is elite. They'll be one of the better defensive and goaltending teams in the NHL. And their offense, it's looking like it's going to improve with Kadri. So the Islanders are a team to watch out for. And I believe they're going to be back in the playoffs. All right, the hot takes are kind of at the end now. Second in the Metro Division, I got the Carolina Hurricanes. 51-24-7 record for 109 points. Easily a top 2 team in this division. I don't think there's really much of a debate there. These last 2 teams I really don't think I need to spend too much time on. Hurricanes are still solid as ever. Got good goaltending. They just got to stay healthy. Defense is one of the best in the league, and a deep offensive core that's still going to pile up the goals and be a pretty good offensive team. Deep at every position, well-rounded. Like I said, they should be in contention for the Stanley Cup. Again, comes down to the health of that goaltending, because if Frederik Andersen was healthy during that playoff run, I think the Hurricanes probably could have gone along further than where they did. And obviously they made some huge additions this offseason, adding Brett Burns, who to replace Tony Giangelo, still a very solid offensive defenseman, maybe a little bit older, so we'll see, but I still think he's going to put up some good numbers. And obviously adding Max Pacioretty, getting him for absolutely free, robbing Vegas. I know he's got a bit of a huge cap hit, and Vegas had some cap issues, but you add a guy who's capable of prodding about 35 goals. Definitely a huge get. Now he's supposed to miss like a big chunk of the season, like at least half of the year, maybe more. So that is a bit of a key loss in terms of just having him not in the lineup for a huge part of the year. But they still have the depth to replace Sebastian Aho, leading scorer on this team. I got him being an 85-point guy, roughly over 35 goals. Just still an elite center, maybe not, one of the most elite guys, like not a McDavid, a Matthews, a McKinnon, or anything like that, but still probably a top 10 center in the league, I would think. Andrei Svechnikov should be roughly a 70-point guy. He needs to really break out, even though he had a pretty good season, like 30 goals, 69 points last year. So roughly have him scoring the same. He's going to be a very solid top-line winger, top-line contributor, the perennial 30-goal scorer. Teuvo Teravainen roughly should have around 70 points. One of the more underrated players in the league, in my opinion. One of the better playmaking wingers as well. And Seth Jarvis, I think, having a breakout season. Over 60 points, should be a 25-goal guy. I think just the depth on this team, it's pretty good. Then, of course, fifth, I got Brett Burns, just because I think he's going to quarterback the number 1 power play unit, and they have an elite power play. So 50 points makes all the sense in the world there. The one cause of concern for this team is kind of their center depth. Losing Vincent Trocheck, they have a bit of a hole in that second-line center hole. Is Jordan Stahl now the number 2 center, or is he ideally a number 3 center? I think I would bet on the latter there. So I think the key piece for this Hurricanes team, it could come down to Jesperi Kotkaniemi, 3rd overall pick, hasn't quite established himself as a top 6 center in the league. This is his major opportunity to be a perennial number 2 center in the NHL. He's going to have some good players to play with. Obviously, when Pacioretty comes back, he's going to have one of Teravainen or Svechnikov on his wing. And also, you got Seth Jarvis, Martin Necas looking to have a bounce-back season. There's some very solid wingers he could play with to give him more of an opportunity to produce. But that's really the only concern. Other than that, the Hurricanes, overall, well-rounded. They should be an elite team in the regular season and definitely a Stanley Cup contender. And with that, winning the Metropolitan Division, I got the New York Rangers, taking it pretty comfortably, a 53-21-8 record for a total of 114 points. And obviously, going to that Eastern Conference Finals last year, they are still in Stanley Cup contention. Not much really to say. They're elite at every position. They got a top 2 goalie in the league in Igor Shesterkin, coming off a Vezina type season. Well, actually won the Vezina. Their defense, I think, is only going to get better. Adam Fox, an elite offensive defenseman. I do think Ryan Lindgren's an underrated defensive defenseman to play on his pair. Jacob Trouba, just named captain, I think is very solid. Keandre Miller's another young guy. I expect to take another step forward. I think there's more offense there in the tank, but obviously that blue line, a lot of big bodies. I think it's just going to continue to develop and grow, and it's going to get even better. And that's a big reason why I think this New York Rangers team is going to be that much more elite, because already we know they're a great offensive team when you got guys like Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad, and now you add Vincent Trocheck, who Carolina lost, and now you keep him in the same division. Now he's the second line center on that Rangers team. Obviously an upgrade over Ryan Strome, in my opinion. And then, of course, Chris Kreider, who's coming off a 50-goal season. I don't think he's going to replicate that, but still just a ton of talent on this team, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be in contention for the Stanley Cup as well. So in terms of the top 5 in scoring, Panarin obviously going to lead the team, be roughly 100 points, about 25 to 30 goals, and obviously one of the better playmakers in the game. Could hover around assists per game. I think he could be a lot better than where I have him, 73 assists and 82. I think he could probably get close to 80. Wouldn't surprise me. Zibanejad's a true number 1 center in this league. He proved it in the regular season, and he elevated his game in the playoffs. He should be roughly a point per game guy, over 30 goals. Adam Fox is near point per game defenseman, in my opinion. He's one of the more elite offensive guys. He's going to rack up a ton of assists. Obviously quarterback in that top unit, which was lethal last season. Vincent Trocheck playing alongside Artemi Panarin, assumably on that second line, is going to pop off, be well over 60 points. That wouldn't surprise me, be a 25 to 30 goal scorer. And then 5th, I got Chris Kreider, 36 goals, 58 points. I don't think he's going to be a 50s goal scorer this time. Like half his goals came with a power play. I do think there was a little bit of luck involved there. I just don't see him as a perennial 50-goal guy typically. But yes, he'll probably still put up 30 to 40 goals. I guess that does make a lot of sense. But 50 is a tall order. But if he can replicate that, man, that Rangers team is going to be hella dangerous. And that's not even considering the fact that they still have Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere, who have yet to really take that next step forward, take that jump in their development. Neither of them have really established themselves as, you know, true top 6 talents, but both of them being high draft picks. If those guys especially could take a next step forward, the Rangers, I think, are absolutely going to dominate the NHL next year. That's going to wrap up this video of my Metropolitan standings predictions for the NHL 2022-2023 season. As always, let me know in the comments section if you agree or disagree with this list. And that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one. I'll see you guys later.